3, go. Adding moving fabric to maternity portraits has become very, very popular. So I wanted to share with you a few things to consider when you're trying to create something really different and unique for your clients. So I've got lots of fabric here, but to start with, I want to share some advice in terms of when posing a pregnant woman and having her stand there for a long period of time. So when you do have a client come into your studio that may be heavily pregnant, always ask them how they're feeling. Of course, tell them they look amazing, but ask them how they're feeling and get a good understanding of whether or not they've got sore, swollen feet, or if they've had a sore back, things like that. So you can be mindful of those when you are trying to create something that might take a little bit more time. So my advice when you're trying to capture moving fabric is you are never going to get the perfect capture in one shot. And I'm talking about light, I'm talking about pose, I'm talking about expression, and I'm talking about all of that moving fabric. So this is the type of shot that is going to take you a little bit of time in post-production to bring some of that moving fabric into your image to create, the hero shot, really, the shot that's going to stand out, that's for sure. So when I get my client posed, I bring them around towards the light. I talk them through the process of the way that I want them to stand, their expression, where I want their chin held, all of those basic posing techniques I use, and getting their foot up. Now remember, trying to stand on one leg with your hands in a position that isn't very natural, after a while, they're going to get a little wobbly, and then throw in, a baby in their belly. So that's why we always need to be quite quick when we are posing them and putting them into positions that they might not feel comfortable in for a long period of time. So I focus on getting the shot of my mum to be first, and then I focus on capturing the movement, and you'll see that throughout the tutorials. And then you can tell them to relax their leg once you've got that shot. So when I am getting that perfect expression, that perfect pose, that's when I start to add in movement to the hair. Because when we have movement in the fabric, we need that movement to be consistent throughout the entire frame so that it looks realistic. Because why would the dress or the fabric be moving if nothing else in the image is moving? So that's something to really remember, to make it consistent and make it look realistic. So to have hair move, you can use a hairdryer, you can use a large fan, you could use a piece of board, anything, polystyrene, something that's sort of quite firm that you can wave in front of them. And I often find if someone has beautiful long hair, it's that upward motion that allows that wind to come up and move the hair exactly where you want them to do it. So you can use their partner, you can use an assistant, anyone really, or you can set up a more direct fan. A hairdryer is going to be even more direct, and it's not going to give you a lot of movement in other areas, maybe just one focused area, but depending on obviously your client's hair, that will depend on what you can use to get the best results. So while I'm trying to capture the expression, the pose, I've got the movement in the hair, and then I may just have a set of hands off to the side, moving the fabric just gently to get a little bit of movement so that when I do start to composite those images together, I've got that sort of direction of the fabric already happening in my shot. All right, so now that we've discussed probably the most important part of it, this is where you can start to choose your fabric and create some really dramatic and exciting sort of shapes and lines within your frame that can help in terms of your overall composition. But remember, when we are throwing fabric, it can get very busy, it can get very untidy. So that's why you want to keep your movements, whoever is working your fabric for you, keep your movements sort of, soft and flowing, because you want that fabric to look like it is caught in a breeze and it's got that beautiful flow to it. So if you just start sort of, throwing fabric around everywhere, you're going to end up with giant flicks and hard lines and things like that going on in your image. And it's not going to add to your overall composition in terms of the way that you've posed your mum to be. and it's going to add a lot of distracting elements to the background and take your eye and attention away from the mum. So always remember, when moving fabric, to keep that fabric somewhat low and have a look at the way that the fabric captures air and how it moves and falls. When you're choosing different fabrics, that's probably the one thing that I'm looking for, how it drapes when you hold fabric, you know, how it moves and so forth. I tend to stick with more sheer fabrics, lightweight fabrics that are easy to move. I've got a few other pieces here that I quite like. And I know you're all thinking, what's the name of that fabric? Well, for me, it doesn't necessarily matter what type of fabric it is. I want to go into a fabric store and I want to hold it, touch it, feel it. I do the crush test. I'm like, does it crush? Because we know what creases in fabric look like when we photograph them and how hard they are to remove throughout the entire image. So I'll do the crush test and then I'll just have a look at the way that it drapes. So with a fabric like this that's a bit more structured, it drapes beautifully, but being more structured, it's going to give me a very different result. So this one here, it is a tightly sort of woven chiffon. It is going to fall lovely and it's going to create a really nice look, whereas something like this, it's a bit more structured, it's going to give me an even different result and it's going to hold the air underneath it for longer, giving me a fuller shape. So depending on the result that you want will be the deciding factor in terms of the fabric that you are looking for. I've also got a really lightweight, it's like a netting, it's a tulle, a very soft tulle, and it's got a bit of a stretch in it as well. So when you're photographing brides, obviously they've got long veils, you can create that same sort of flowing effect with those. With tulle, you can have it sort of around your client, your model, and you can even sort of, you know, create some beautiful flowing lines. But because of the holes in, you know, throughout the fabric, it's not going to capture air like the other fabric before. It's going to fall a little differently, but it will create some beautiful lines and shapes for you, just a different result. I do like the way that it does fall. Now, if you were looking at different fabrics, this is just a heavy knit stretch, like a 4-way stretch. It's very heavy. It drapes beautifully, but when you start to move this fabric, and let's pop it around her. When you start to move a fabric like this, you know, it's going to fall very differently because of the weight that's in it. And you can see the way that it falls. So it's probably not going to be a go-to for me, but you could still create some really different results. Because it's heavy, it would be better suited to, you know, more of a sort of a ground movement. But again, it's not going to give you great results. But there's no reason why you can't try all the different fabrics that are out there and see what works best for you. But again, just going back over those top tips, make sure you capture the mum, you know, first focus on her, make sure there's movement coming through the entire image in terms of her hair, and use beautiful sheer, lightweight fabrics that have a beautiful drape quality that you can move. And when you are moving them, again, you know, get down nice and low and use slow flowing movements that would look natural, like a breeze had just passed by. I look forward to seeing what you create very soon.